The Dialed In Angling Podcast, presented by Strikemaster Augers, Onyx Fish, and Arneson's Rocky Point Resort. Welcome back. This week, we've got a great show for you. I want to start out with some fishing reports, talk about where I've been, what I'm hearing from other anglers. As we get towards June, this is the time to be on the water. If you're an angler, you know that June is one of those times a year that you look forward to all season long, and it's right upon us. We've talked in the past on past podcasts about the roller coaster of weather we've had. Things have really kind of stabled out here. The weather has been absolutely gorgeous to be on the water. The wind's laid down, and I've been taking full advantage of it with guiding and just kind of running all over fishing. Even when I get done working, I've been going out pan fishing with my kids. It's been absolutely wonderful to be on the water this past week. In addition to the fishing reports, I'm going to sit down with the folks from Fishing for Life, hear about what they have to offer, where they've been, what they're about, how they got started. A great show for you. So you're going to want to stay tuned. We appreciate you tuning into the podcast. Let's start with the fishing reports. This week alone, I've been on Mille Lacs. I've been over in Brainerd. I fished multiple lakes over in Brainerd. I fished on Leech Lake. All good. Every destination I've been to, presents different challenges, and the fish are biting in different ways, but they are biting. It's just a matter of finding the fish, what they want. Last week, if you talked or tuned in, I talked to Nate Blazing from the Nisswa Guides League. He was kind of seeing the same thing. A lot of other guides I talked to up on Leech and on Mille Lacs, they're kind of saying the same thing. You've got to be prepared to fish different ways. Right now, I would say the top 3 ways that I'm catching fish are jigs and minnows, still getting them on shiners, bobber fishing, throwing a jig and a leech, jig and a crawler even sometimes. And then I've been doing a little bit of live bait rigging, some live bait rigging with crawlers, with leeches, even some red tail minnows. One lake in particular I fished, they didn't want the red tails. I had all these beautiful red tails. They wanted a spot tail shiner, but, kind of rigging it through the nose hooking that thing, and then dragging that spot tail shiner down. I suppose there's a lot of spot tail shiners still in the shallows. I know some of the fish that I've cleaned after guide trips had shiners in their stomach. And so rigging some of those shiner minnows helped, especially on these high sun days where the fish kind of slipped off the break. So let's start with Mille Lacs Lake, because I've been out on Mille Lacs, a few days here. And, I would say Mille Lacs is more like a Winnie Leech style bite right now, in the sense where if you don't have wind, it's tough to get them to bite. You really have to kind of seek out these fish that are either extremely shallow or that are in better numbers on deeper structure. There's a lot of fish that are moving out to that secondary gravel, even some of the mud flats. If you get out to those areas and you're only seeing like onesie, twosies, whether it's on your 2D sonar, your forward-facing sonar, or side imaging, keep moving. Trying to find those bigger schools of fish are key, because not all of them are biting, right? You might throw into a pack of 10 and only one of them is going to come up and strike the bait. So again, just like it's been the past few seasons, you really have to keep your baits away from the boat. They're extremely boat spooky. And like I was saying, some of those shallow fish are actually spooky from the jig or the bobber. So what I've been doing, if I'm finding fish up in the shallows, like I've been doing some smallmouth bass trips. Well, if I find walleyes and I see schools of walleyes, I try to keep my boat at least 50 feet away from those fish. And then when I cast, I'll actually cast past them and then drag my presentations to them and kind of let it fall slow. So if you're throwing a jig and a minnow, throw it past them, work it on the bottom, making sure that you're maintaining contact with the bottom and leaving that bait on the bottom momentarily, letting them pick that up. And lively shiners are always key in that situation. Anytime you have clear water, you want fresh, lively bait. If you got a shiner minnow that's, ripped or torn or falling off, rebait. I know shiners are expensive, but rebait, you're going to get more bites. Did catch a couple on plastics this week out there. The plastics bite hasn't really kicked into high gear where you're snap jigging, but that's soon to come. We've got some really warm temperatures coming up this weekend. That's going to kick those fish into high gear where they're going to start hitting some of those reactionary type of bites. The second thing on Mille Lacs is bobber fishing has been really good for me since opener. If you've tuned into the podcast, basically since fishing opener, we've talked a lot about bobber fishing, and same thing with the bobbers, kind of pitching them past the fish, dragging them towards those fish, whether it's a school of fish, whatever, and letting that presentation fall slow. And again, lively leeches, even a night crawler, if they won't react to the leech, I'll quickly switch to a night crawler, see if they'll hit that, and then I'll go back to the minnow. So kind of bouncing back and forth within that realm. I haven't done a ton of rigging on Mille Lacs per se, but that rigging bite's coming, with fish really starting to move out to the mud flats. There was some bug activity even last weekend. This warm-up's going to kick them in high gear. The bugs are going to be everywhere. And of course, that drives the bait, that drives the walleyes. I don't know an angler out there that doesn't fish Mille Lacs that doesn't look forward to the mud flat bite on Mille Lacs or some of that deeper gravel. It's just so fun to fish. It's you can get into areas where you just can't believe that there's this many walleyes on one spot. I mean, it's just something to see. And I'm looking forward to that as we get towards June. Now let's shift to the Leech Lake bite. Again, more of the same, although I would say this week more than last, it seemed like the jig and minnow bite was definitely more consistent. However, those fish are in transition as well. Those fish that were up in 6, 7, 8 feet of water are starting to move out to that 10, 12, even deeper. It seemed like the deeper fish were biting better for me. And certainly it's been very calm. And anytime you have calm conditions on leech, it always sort of challenges you to find active biting fish, because it seems like you always find fish. It's just a matter of which ones are biting. And we've had a lot of east winds over the last week here. And so I was sort of looking up and down those western shorelines, or even the western facing structure, to find fish that were a little more aggressive. And it was amazing. You'd have it dead flat calm in the morning, right? The wind would come up just a little bit. You didn't need a walleye chop, air quotes. You just needed a little bit of wind. And it was just that little bit of movement that would trigger those fish. And then boom, you'd have these bite windows where you'd catch them very consistently. And then as soon as you pulled a few out of the schools, those fish started moving on. In that instance, it's easy as an angler to get hung up there and say, wow, we caught a bunch there this morning. Let's continue to sit there. But at that point, you need to just find more active fish and keep moving on. What's nice about Leech, too, is we're getting past the spawn period. So you're getting some bigger fish as well, not just those eater-sized males that are aggressive. We caught some really nice walleyes on Leech Lake this week. I had some customers, longtime customers from Green Bay. They're up there. They're having a ball. Leech Lake is super fun when you get into June. It's right up there on my list of destinations. June, I wish I could hit them all. I'd like to be up at Lake of the Woods. I'd like to be on Red Lake. I'd like to be on Leech. I'd like to be on Brainerd. I'd like to be over on Vermilion. I could just think of so many good bites that occur in June. And I should note, as we get towards this weekend with this warm up, I did a little smallmouth fishing on Mille Lacs in particular, but I saw some on Leech as well. Those fish are definitely getting towards more bed situations. They're bedding up. I've said it before, I'm not a huge bed fisherman. I don't know. I just don't find it as fun as like a jerkbait bite or, pitching plastics or drop shotting. I nothing against bed fishing. It's sort of okay for me to catch them on beds. But it seems like it doesn't take long as we get into even a week or two from now, you're going to have fish that are pulling off of beds. And that post-spawn bite is what really fires me up. That post-spawn bite, they're aggressive. They're hitting a lot of presentations, whether you're like throwing hair jigs or neds or swim baits. My favorite, it usually coincides with some sort of bug hatch and the topwater bite gets fired up. That's when I always have some sort of topwater rigged up in my boat, because there's times where you'll see these post-spawn fish push off a structure and they're just roaming out in the basin, sort of pelagic, but subsurface, and you can catch them anywhere. It's amazing to me how many times I've found smallmouth out into 15, 20 feet of water, just kind of roaming subsurface. And now with forward-facing sonar, you can see those fish. You don't have to bump them. In the past, you kind of had to see them bust the surface. If you didn't see that, if you get too close to them, they just won't bite. And so keep that in mind. We're not at the topwater stage yet, but you're going to want to start thinking topwater if you're a smallmouth fisherman. Lastly, I want to talk a little bit about Brainerd. I've been at several lakes around the Brainerd Lakes area. The vegetation's starting to come up. A lot of the fish were still really shallow, although I did see over the weekend that some fish started shifting deeper, but I don't know if those fish were because of all the boat traffic. A lot of the lakes that I fished were extremely clear. And so, there was an abundance of boat traffic out there. I don't know. Everybody was taking advantage of the beautiful Memorial Day weekend. They were out boating. I saw people skiing. I saw people jet skiing. I saw people wakeboarding. There was people just cruising in pontoons, having fun. But when it's dead flat, calm, high sun, it's going to have an effect on those fish. And we caught fish. We had a great time. Friday was better than Saturday. But, I think it a lot had to do with the boat traffic itself. But if you're heading to the Brainerd area, definitely get the rigging rods ready, because some of those fish that shifted off the tops of these structures, they were a little bit deeper. They really wanted the rig. You could run a rigger past them, and they were biting. Some of the fish shallow, if you found them really shallow up, especially in the weeds, it seemed like those fish were biting. And so have the bobber rods ready, have the jigging rods ready, and of course, have the rigging rods ready if you plan on hitting the Brainerd Lakes area. We're going to take a quick break and pause for our sponsors, and then we're going to get into some conversation with the two gentlemen that I'll be fishing with later, and they're from Fishing for Life. So stay tuned. We got more Dialed In Angling podcast after this. onX Fish is the best tool I have ever used for finding new lakes to target. Download the app today to get fisheries information in the state of Minnesota and Wisconsin, along with research tools for serious anglers and beginners alike. Filter lakes by species, trophy only, keeper fish, abundance, or all of the above. Plan which lakes to fish with the app, navigate to the accesses, and once you're there, use the onX best-in-class weather imagery and fishing hotspots to catch more fish. onX Fish is a phenomenal tool both on and off the water for discovering new fishing opportunities, many of which you would never known existed. onX Fish, the app that is changing the game on ice. Okay, my next guests are from Fishing for Life. They're going to get into depth about what Fishing for Life is all about, how they got started. Steve Cruikshank, Todd Lindley, thank you for being on the podcast. I look forward to fishing with you guys. We are actually on the shores of Gull Lake, one of my favorite spots to fish over in Brainerd. I have some fond memories of, fishing all these lakes around here. But Steve, let's start with you. Let's talk a little bit about how Fishing for Life got started, what you guys are all about. I know I've donated countless fishing trips for fundraisers. I've come and done seminars. I've seen you guys. I know a lot of our listeners, if they're from Minnesota, if they've been to the Northwest Sports Show or other shows, they've seen you around. Tell us a little more about Fishing for Life.
Well, thanks for having me. And so in 2004, Tom Goodrich came back from Afghanistan and started Fishing for Life. And over in Afghanistan, he pretty much had a vision from God to do something with youth and get them out in the fishing industry. And so when he came back, he started Fishing for Life. And that was in 2004. And now in 2025, 21 years later now, last year we were just inducted into the Minnesota Fishing Hall of Fame. And so that was a pretty great opportunity for us. But we have, since then, we've developed 8 core programs that we serve military, veterans, community fishing, and outdoor programs. One of our ministries is our Deep Seas Men's Ministry. So we have 4 groups that meet in the north, south, east, and west of the Twin Cities. And we have dinner at 6 o'clock, and we have a devotion, and we have a guest speaker that talks about fishing or outdoor hunting or fishing or anything outdoors. And then our Owls group is our women's group for our ladies, the Outdoor Women for Life, the Owls. They meet once a month and have Bible studies and go fishing and horseshoeing, snowshoeing, and other outdoor events. And also we have our military relationship through recreation. If you're in the military, you know that R&R stands for rest and relaxation, but we take it one step farther, and we want to make relationships with these veterans. So we call it our military relationships through recreation, and we take them out fishing. We have about 18 events that are specifically for veterans. We do a catfish event up on the Red River up in East Grand Forks. We took 18 veterans up there in 6 boats, and we caught 250 catfish in 2 days.
Wow. I've always wanted to do that. Catfish, just where I grew up in northern Minnesota, there's just no catfish. The only time I've really ever caught cats was like in saltwater, and then a couple of bycatches on the river, but I've always wanted to do that. So that's awesome. I've always wanted to go to the Red River. I had classmates that used to go over there and catch these giant catfish. Super cool.
Yeah, we 250 catfish, but the biggest one is 37.5 inches long. We caught probably 25 to 30 of them that were over 30 inches. So
wow,
yeah, big channel cats. So
that's
that
neat.
was fun.
That's a cool trip.
We also do a pheasant trip. We have a couple pheasant trips. We do one out in South Dakota, one down in Nebraska. Pretty fun events as well. We just started a new program called Real Hope, which targets inner city youth, gets them out fishing. We actually let them rebuild a donated rod and reel, so they get to find out how a rod and reel actually works. They get to take the line off and put new line on it of their choice. They get to put a tackle box together with assortment of tackle. And that's stuff that they get to take home. And then the next event that they do is a lake event where we do a pier fishing event. And they get to test out their equipment and learn some skills on fishing. And then the third event to top it off, and again, we're about relationships. And the third event would be a launch out on Mille Lacs or out on Minnetonka, where the kids get to go out on a boat and actually experience some casting and fishing. And then our Reel 'em In program is a takeoff from the Castaway program that Ron Cherry had years ago. And so we take in thousands of rods and reels from all over the country, really. People send us rods and reels from all over. And we rebuild them and then give them back to the community in different events. Then we also have our mobile trout ponds where we set up a 8x16 trout pond, fill it full of water, put trout in it, and kids get to come and fish. And a lot of times it's their first opportunity to go fishing. It's the first fish that they catch, and not a lot of people had the opportunity to catch trout as well. So it's kind of a neat opportunity. And then our final program with fishing is our outdoor camps. We do a turkey camp where last year we had, just this spring, had 16 kids shot 9 turkeys this spring. So it was a pretty successful hunt. We do a deer hunt for them. They get to do their firearm safety. We do a pheasant hunt where they get to, walk through a field and shoot some pheasants at a pheasant farm. And so we just try to serve kids, families, veterans, and communities through fishing and outdoor programs.
That's incredible. I mean, that's a full schedule throughout the year. I mean, if I would like to do all those things, deer hunt, pheasant, that all sounds awesome. I mean, talk about, that there's not too many organizations that, take kids fishing, hunting, veterans fishing, you're kind of a one-stop shop when it comes to that. How many volunteers would you say you have on staff? And then, of course, how many kids and adults, veterans do you take out, per year?
Well, we have 11 on staff. They're not all full-time. There's 5 of us that are full-time and 6 that are part-time. But we have eight core programs, and since 2004, we've served over 63,000 kids, families, and veterans through fishing. And we do last year we did 178 events, individual events, and some of those events can be a whole week-long camp. But we do this with our volunteers, and we couldn't do any of it without the thousands of volunteers that we get, and about 9,000 hours of volunteering every year. So a lot of volunteers.
Well, the next guest sitting next to me, Todd Lindley, tell us a little bit about being a volunteer. I know you're a volunteer for Fishing for Life. Tell us your story and how you got involved.
Yeah, so back in 2013, I bought a nice boat, and I told my wife that I didn't want to just keep the boat to ourselves, my family. I wanted to, I grew up following the Lindners and in fishermen, and I knew about their ministry, and I wanted to find something where I could give back some of the blessings that I have had, to be able to share that back with the community. And so I started praying, and within a few days, I got a call from a friend that I didn't even knew about Fishing for Life, and he invited me to go to a fall retreat in September of 2013, and that's when I met Steve and Tom Goodrich and a bunch of the men, and the rest is I just started volunteering. Doing some volunteer guiding. I did some of the summer camps, the week-long summer camps. One of my favorite events has been the Dark Horse Spearing event that we do in December up on Lake, on Winnie. That's been a growing program. And then I did end up serving on the board for 6 years. So just both feet in, all in, and now I'm retired and kind of stepping back a little bit from some of that work, but it's still a great organization. And as Steve was saying, we can't run without volunteers. There's hundreds of volunteers with their boats that come and help out.
Yeah, absolutely. What are some of your favorite memories, throughout the years? Obviously, whether it's someone or a attendee that touched you in some way, or just something you remember that really stands out where you're like, that was incredible.
Well, one event comes to mind. We were on a lake event on White Bear Lake, and I took out these 2 girls from the girls were from I can't think of but we took them out on my boat, and she didn't want to go fast in the boat. She was really scared about being in the boat. So we just took it slow, went across the lake over to a channel where I knew we could catch sunfish, and I baited up her pole and casted it out there. And as soon as the bobber hit the water, it went under. And she set the hook and reeled it in, and I took the fish off, and she was just beaming. And I cast it back out there again, same thing, over and over again for about an hour and a half. We just caught fish one right after the other. And then it was time to go back to shore. We get out onto the lake, and she goes, "Well, we can go faster now." And now she wants to sit on my knee and hold the throttle with me as we're cruising across the lake. I thought that was a pretty awesome experience.
Yeah, for me, I would say maybe a similar experience. I had an 8-year-old autistic boy that got in my boat. His mother was there with him to help him in the boat. He was very anxious. I said, "We'll take good care of you." His first statement was, "I don't want to go fast." I said, "Okay, we won't go fast." And We went out, it was a local lake outside of the Twin Cities area, and we went to a spot. We caught a couple of crappies, some sunnies. There were a couple of other kids with us. So he caught his first fish, and on the way back, he said, I'd like to go faster to get back now. And he relaxed from the time that he got in the boat till the end. And when we got back to the shore, his mother was there to pick him up, and he just looked at her and said, "That's the most fun I've ever had." Seeing the smiles on the kids' faces, catching their first fish, and having those joy-filled experiences has always been the best for me.
I think of fishing, my whole life has been fishing, right? And I think of fishing, it just bonds people. It gives people experiences that they may have never had. Some people, especially kids, are apprehensive to go fishing, especially if they haven't grown up around it. They don't know what to experience. Some have never maybe even been on the water. And I was in seminars. I always tell people, we got to get kids out fishing, right? It seems like in today's society, even if they're kids that parents had a boat or, households get busy, right? I mean, people are busy working. We're busy with sports. Sometimes it's, parents don't live together, whatever the reason, it seems like kids aren't fishing as much as they used to. As we sit here on Gull Lake, I can think of pulling up to resorts and there would be a kid on every single dock, right? And now you kind of look out, and I know it's midweek, but there's a lot of kids that just aren't fishing anymore. And coming from a person that my whole life is fishing, it started somewhere, and it's people took me fishing. My grandfather, my dad, my uncles, I fished off of docks. I grew that passion because of people taking me fishing, and kids have to start somewhere. I know there's statistics out there that say if we don't get kids or youth involved with the sport of fishing by a certain age, there's a high likelihood that they'll never be involved. And I think of Minnesota as being, the ultimate destination for getting kids fishing, because even in the Twin Cities metro area, there's lakes, there's river systems, there's areas where you can go fishing. Even where I live in northern Minnesota, there's lakes everywhere. I had to bike by lakes every day. I used to go fishing on my way to school every day. I used to ride my boat across the lake and go to school and go to baseball, and I would fish. And, but that passion started with someone taking me and introducing me to that. What are some of your experiences, or how can you, kind of give some advice as far as getting people or kids involved? There's some people out there that maybe they're not anglers themselves, but they want to do something. What can you touch on that would help those individuals?
Well, having equipment available to donate to would be a great opportunity for kids. I know that a lot of the reel 'em in rods that we get, that we rebuild and we give back to the community, it's the first rod and reel that they've ever had, and it's first opportunity to go fishing. And then allowing them to do a pier fishing event where they realize that they can ride their bike down to the local pier, jump on the pier and cast out and catch fish, or drive their bike down to the river and be able to catch fish that way as well. So just is equipping the kids to be able to do that is probably the biggest point I could think of.
I know I've donated rods to Fishing for Life, rods that I may not be using, or even you guys said, hey, if it's got a broken tip or something. I mean, these were really quality rods that, they were just sitting in my pole shed. What are some of the donations that you guys will take from the public out there if people want to get involved?
We take pretty much anything, gently used sporting goods. We take boats, RVs, trailers, ATVs, motors, and land. Anything that you figure that you can donate, we accept. And we are a nonprofit 501c3, so we can give you a tax-deductible donation receipt as well.
Cool. if people want to get involved with Fishing for Life, if they want to get a hold of you, I mean, what are some of the ways to do so? And then, what are some of the events that you have coming up this summer that maybe you're looking for volunteers, people to get involved?
Yeah, our website is probably the best way to find out what's going on with Fishing for Life. So it's Fishing for Life, FOR Life at .org. And we have a calendar, and you can click on the calendar of events and pretty much see from month to month what events we have going on. And then you click on that event, and it gives you more information about the who, what, why, where, and when, and then the opportunity to volunteer or to donate are all on the website.
Awesome. Now, what are some of the events that you've got coming up here, let's say this summer or in the next, month or two that, people want to hear about?
Well, we have our Armed Forces Family Fishing Celebration that's coming up here in June. We take out probably 60 veterans and their families so they can bring their young kids and families, and we'll have 20 to 25 boats out there with boat guides, volunteer boat guides. Will take these kids and the veterans out fishing. We do camps every week throughout the summer. We have our catfish camp coming up for kids that's on the Mississippi River, where we actually stay out on an island on the Mississippi River, and the kids get to go catfishing. Last year, the biggest was a flathead catfish. It was 40-pounder, so it was pretty awesome time for the kids to be able to reel that thing in. But
that had to be there had to be people just cheering. I mean, 40-pound catfish, that's incredible. That's a whoever was there, not even the person catching it, but whoever is there, that's a core memory that's going to last. I mean, to watch someone reel in a 40-pound cat.
I would say too the day camps during the summer. If you have a boat and you've thought about volunteering, my anxiety initially was what if I don't catch fish? What if I don't know the lake? Because you're going to lots of different lakes, and you just go. There's a great camaraderie between all of the people. We have men, we have women with their boats that come and volunteer. Everybody helps each other, and the day camps are a great opportunity because they'll take kids and they go to 5 different lakes in the metro area, one different lake each day. And maybe you can't do a whole week, but maybe you could do a Monday or a Wednesday, a couple of days. And it's a great opportunity to start, to get a little bit of experience in guiding with kids like that. So I would encourage people to try it out that way.
Yeah, I know people get nervous when you talk about guiding and taking people out, and maybe you're newly retired or just, want to do something. You want to volunteer, but you love fishing. Don't worry about that stuff. All these events that I've ever, been a part of as far as guiding and donating my time, we all talk and share information. And, most of these destinations that you're going to, there's going to be a spot where, you can call someone and say, hey, the fish are biting over here, you're catching bluegills over there. That should be the least of your worries. I've done kids events in the past where, some of the guides were nervous about it, and we're like, no, we all are on a group text or chat. We're sharing pictures. This is my location. Most anglers are great about sharing information. They all want the same thing, right? And these kids to catch fish. And sometimes it's more about the experience, like you touched on earlier, kids being in the boat for the first time, experiencing a fast boat ride, being on the water, seeing birds, seeing the wildlife, seeing fish jump, that's all part of it. Looking in the water, even for me as an angler, you take all that in, right? I can think of a lake like this, like Gull Lake, that is super clear. I have just as much fun driving around, looking over the side of the boat and seeing all the fish. And so that's as much or as important as the fishing itself. And you should never be worried about, not being able to, perform or get these kids, as many fish as possible. Because even 1 or 2 fish, this is way more than they've ever experienced their whole life.
Yeah. Yeah. Steve, tell them about, years ago, we still have the Holes for Heroes ice fishing contests. But tell them about the one story where I think it was Channel 11 was there, and they were videoing this boy whose father, I think it was serving in Iraq, and we had a live feed. So he's in the tent fishing and talking to his father on the screen, who he hasn't seen for probably months.
Yeah, and so the father's on the screen and simulcasting, and the mother's behind the boy, and the bobber goes down, and he sets the hook. It's a northern, a nice sized northern that he pulls up through the hole, and he wanted to take it up to the weigh-in station right away so he could win the prize, and he's running out of the tent, and his dad's like, "Hold on, I want to see the fish too." It's like. He could, he wanted to get it to the weigh-in station, but that was called our hole of honor, and so about every 15 minutes, we'd get a new family that would come in, and we'd telecast back to Afghanistan or Iraq or wherever they were at. We would be able to film the parent and the child at the same time. So that was a unique opportunity that we put together.
What a cool experience for everyone, to have a family member serving overseas, you miss them, and then you're at this cool event, and then they get to be part of it. I can't imagine the amount of tears that were probably rolling down people's faces. Yeah. Even the people involved with volunteering at that point, because I don't know that I could hold it together. It's a very, very cool opportunity. Well, let's wrap up this. Why don't you give the listeners the website once again, how people can get involved? I know Fishing for Life, you guys, man, I can't believe all the events that you guys do throughout the season. Even someone who is very familiar with Fishing for Life, I had no idea that you did that many events throughout the calendar year. So it's super cool. Strongly encourage people to volunteer, donate, get involved at any level. If you're curious about Fishing for Life, you can even go to the website. Why don't you give us the information once again?
fishingforlife.org. That's fishingforlife.org.
Okay, we're going to take a quick break, but when we come back, let's talk a little bit more about fishing. I know you guys are up here. You're going to fish Teen Challenge. We can talk a little bit about Teen Challenge and why you guys donate your time for Teen Challenge. It's a great event that they have on Gull Lake here every single year. Let's talk about it. We'll talk a little strategy as we move forward, what you guys are pumped about. Stay tuned. We got more Dialed In Angling podcast after this. Arneson's Rocky Point Resort in northern Minnesota offers a little something for everyone. Nestled on Lake of the Woods South Shore, it provides easy access to 14 remarkable reefs. Serious anglers know that Arneson's offers some of the best fishing, charter fishing, and small boat fishing options, all supported by the largest protected marina on the lake's South Shore. Accommodation selections range from 1 to 5 bedrooms. Equipped with all the modern conveniences, guests can enjoy a delightful dining experience and stunning lake views at the Rock Harbor Lodge, an on-site, full-service bar and restaurant. The two beaches provide hours of fun for the whole family. Whether you're seeking an idyllic fishing spot or a relaxing vacation, Arneson's Rocky Point has everything you need. Check them out at arnesonsresort.com. Okay, for the final segment of the Dialed In Angling podcast this week, I'm sitting with two gentlemen from Fishing for Life, Steve Cruikshank, Todd Lindley. Thanks again for being on the show. Thanks for talking about Fishing for Life. But let's get into a little detail about fishing on Gull Lake. We can talk about, the fishing itself. I'll get into the fishing portion because I love Gull Lake. But then let's talk about your fishing, the Minnesota Adult and Teen Challenge Tournament, raising money for Teen Challenge, kind of how you got started fishing the Teen Challenge Tournament. I know there's a lot of other people that do it. I've fished other tournaments over here. I've never fished Teen Challenge Tournament, but Camp Confidence for years. I love the derby style tournaments that they do out here. It's always a great event. They raise a lot of money. Gull Lake's a great area to do it because you've got a lot of lodging. You've got a lot going on. It's right in the Brainerd area. So let's talk about fishing itself. You guys are fishing the walleye division, right? There's other, they have the bass division, the mixed bag, right? Kind of like the other tournaments. It's amazing how many fish are in Gull Lake. Gull Lake is kind of like, it reminds me of almost of, I don't want to say it's like a Minnetonka, but it's almost like a Tonka. I didn't grow up fishing Minnetonka, but I did grow up fishing over here on Gull Lake, and it's amazing the amount of fish in this lake. Just the tournament itself and going out fishing, how many fish you catch, whether it's small bass, walleyes, pike, bluegills, crappies. When you look around out here with your electronics or even looking over the side of the boat, because Gull's gotten really clear, it's amazing all the different types of species of fish you see. And I guess the Minnetonka element would be the boat traffic, because when you fish these things on a weekend, you start out in the morning, it's mainly just anglers. And by the end of the day, it's wakeboarders, tourists, people going by on jet skis. So there's that whole challenge there of fishing that tournament. But let's talk a little bit about the Minnesota Adult Teen Challenge tournament itself, why you guys fish it, and we'll go from there.
Well, I started out, I didn't fish the very first one, but I did fish every one since then. And I fished the second one with my brother, who has passed away now. And now in 2014, that's when I met Todd. And then that's when we hooked up and became partners in the Teen Challenge tournament, and raising money for a group that helps people with addictions of all different kinds, alcohol, drugs. And it just was a great opportunity to raise money for a good cause.
Yeah, and for me, it was obviously I got invited from Steve, but for me, it's another way to give back. It's not about the fishing, the competition. It's more about being together, the camaraderie, and seeing the groups of people that come together, the number of anglers, the number of boats that have grown over the years. And in talking to so many of these anglers, nobody talks about it as if they're here for the competition and to win some division. And Tony, you mentioned about the Gull Lake having so many different species. It makes it difficult to choose which section you're gonna, which category you're gonna enter. And so for us, for Steve and I think our best year, we took third place in the walleye division. This was maybe 7 or 8 years ago. And it was kind of a fluke because we caught a couple of walleye early and thought, well, maybe this is the division we're supposed to be in. And so that's what we did. But in other years, we've done bass and panfish. And so it's been a great lake. It's a great organization to support. One of my memories that is solid in my head is listening to the choir. The residents, the people that are in the program here in Brainerd, they all get together on a weekly basis and they have choir practice. And these are people from all over that didn't start out with singing careers, but they get put together and they sing, and it raises the short hairs in the back of your head when you listen to these people. And some of them come up and share their stories, their testimonies, and it's just amazing and very inspiring to see these people and their lives being changed. So that's why I keep coming back.
Yeah, I mean, this tournament's here to raise money for Minnesota Adult and Teen Challenge. People get stuck in a rut, whether it's with alcohol or drugs or whatever. And I met countless people that have been part of Teen Challenge and that have turned their life around as a result of it. And to have a fundraiser that's a fishing tournament, pretty cool, man. It really is, and it's fun. I've fished a lot of these tournaments for that are for fun. But there is a level of competition. You want to do well. What's cool about the format that they have is, like Todd said, is you go out, you say, okay, I want to be in the bass division, for example, and you go out bass fishing and you start catching walleyes. Then you say you can shift gears, and that's what makes it fun. That format is really, really fun for all involved. I know in the past with Camp Confidence, we were, of course, I'm a walleye angler, so I'm always after the walleye division, but I actually won one of the tournaments with the mixed bag division because one of our first fish was like a 15-pound pike. And I thought, oh man, I don't have all the gear to go out and catch a few more pike, but if we get a walleye, I know where I can catch bass on Gull Lake. So, we won that mixed bag division. It was cool because our first fish of the day was a 15-pound pike. I mean, seeing that thing in our live well, just a fun event. And it was all about raising money, for that particular charity. This adult teen challenge, I know there's a lot of people coming out. It looks like you got beautiful weather here this week. I know that's not always the case for this tournament. Anytime you have anything going on, any outside event at the end of May, you can always run into issues with weather. I know in the past you guys have had storms and rain and all sorts of things. Looks absolutely beautiful. What's your game plan? Obviously, I'm sitting here. We're going to go look for some walleyes, do a little fishing for fun. But are you thinking walleye division this year? What's sort of your objective?
I think that's our goal, is to be back in the walleye division and do as good as we can. Fish hard and have fun.
Yeah, this lake can be interesting. It can be, wow, you look like a hero. And then other days it's challenging. I just know, like I touched on earlier in the podcast, guiding out here over this past weekend, things that are out of your control as far as boat traffic and different things. Also out here, this lake used to be dark. It used to be a lot darker than it is. It's extremely clear right now. And when you're fishing walleyes, bass, whatever, can become a real challenge, especially if you get high sun, dead flat calm. It's like any of these other lakes that are affected by zebra mussels. That clear water it makes it very tough, and you've got to fish certain ways. And I know it's a fun tournament, so I always have that level of competitiveness to me. So I'm always thinking about it, and of course I'm the ultimate fish head, so I'm constantly thinking about that stuff. But I just know from fishing out here in the last few weeks, there are certain areas of this lake that the fish are biting very well. And there's other times that and places that they're not biting as well, even though there's a lot of them there. And so that'll be your biggest hurdle. But either way, you're going to have a blast doing it. You're going to see a lot of other anglers, and you're going to have some camaraderie, and you're doing it for a great cause. That's the Minnesota Teen Adult Challenge of Minnesota. So anything else you guys want to add? We got to hit the water here. The clock is ticking, and I see that sun is really starting to pop out here. Anything else you want to add or interject before we end the podcast?
Just thanks for having us on, and I just hope everybody can go to the website at fishingforlife.org and check us out, and possibly volunteer or donate. Or just come and participate in one of our events.
Yeah. Thank you, Tony. And volunteer. You'll be glad you did.
Yeah, that's fishingforlife.org. You can get involved at any level, even if it's donations or if you're curious about it. Check out the website. Thank you, gentlemen, so much for being on the podcast. I look forward to fishing with you. Stay tuned next week. We're going to have a ton of great information. We'll continue with the fishing reports. This has been Dialed In Angling Podcast. We'll see you next week.